Hey everybody!
Hey everybody! Hey everybody!
Welcome back to the King of the Bean.
Yeah.
I am your host Ian, and I have Ryan and Josh.
Wow, we're the other hosts.
With the mostesses.
Yeah, we also do things probably.
So
sometimes.
For this week, I have decided.
Yeah, what have you decided? You haven't even told us.
To abdicate the throne.
Oh, to whom?
To Ryan.
Why?
Because I want him to talk about a topic that we've talked about.
Does he want to talk about it?
Quite a bit, but he's never felt like it was the right time. But I think it is. So Ryan, take it away.
All right, I have claimed the throne, and the topic that has been decreed upon me is education. So this piggybacks on our last episode, actually, because we were talking about school and stuff. But more specifically, I guess we're going to talk about our experiences overall with education. I think
the education system,
which again we touched on in the last one.
And we had kind of like an impromptu conversation about this yesterday. Actually.
Yeah, Josh and I were talking about this last night when we went to go get pizza a little bit, so we can reiterate that conversation as well.
Well, and part of the reason I want to talk about it is because my friends in Discord, we happen to have like this big lengthy conversation about the education system, because a lot of it, it's like I'm from California. I have a friend, shout out Bree, in South Dakota. Then I have another friend, Laura. She grew up in North Carolina. Shout out to Laura. And we were kind of talking about our experiences. Some of the people in our Discord are from Europe, so they were sharing their thing. I still find it weird that Hogwarts, like the whole system, is really based off the UK education system, where they actually have houses and stuff like that.
Do they actually?
Yeah, and they actually go to school in castles. And I'm so jealous.
That's the biggest bummer of the U.S. is there's no castles.
Honestly, yeah.
Lack of castles.
Our history's not long enough
to have castles. Yeah. One day.
Bring back castles, 2042.
No one can afford a castle.
Yeah, we can't afford an apartment.
Maybe in 20 years we can.
Hopefully.
Or like the rich people, can you build castles?
No, because then they'll live in there.
Yeah, but then, 100 years from now, when they become empty, the school system could take it.
So this ain't for us.
This is a long...
This is a long time.
It's been a long time.
Okay.
Alright, so we're back now. We brainstormed a bit.
We all moved around. I am still here.
Yeah.
I moved from this spot to here.
Yeah, truth. So let's start off with just our general feelings of education as a whole based on our experiences. Josh, do you want to start us off with your experiences and impressions of education?
Sure. I feel like overall, I didn't feel like I went to the best schools in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, high school specifically, because, elementary and maybe middle school too, it matters to know your basics of certain things, like knowing math, learning how to read and stuff like that, and that's important to anyone. But overall, those experiences are just mostly to learn a lot of social cues with how to interact with other people.
Sure.
And I feel like that's what mostly like an elementary to like middle school idea, and even into high school, that's what it mostly is about, just learning how to interact with other people and how to, make sure you're following along to the cultural norms and everything. And but overall, like when it came to like education in high school, I've learned so much the day before I needed to do something, because I feel like most of the stuff that I was trying to learn, and maybe this is fault in mine, it's just that it did not stick, was not enough for me to retain knowledge in.
Right.
Which I feel like is just an issue in a lot of education system, because not everyone learns the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a big issue. And, that can't be fixed overnight or even on a day-to-day basis, because everyone learns differently, and a teacher only has to teach so many people.
Well, yeah, what I was going to say is I don't know if that can ever be fixed.
No.
Just because, at least the way it is now, there's so many students, and there's even like a teacher shortage, so like class sizes aren't going to get smaller, and as long as kids can't have that one-on-one attention, you're never going to get that.
The way you would do that is you would have to adjust the whole system, right? Like, so there is, as someone who is now more in education, I'm interning for counseling at a junior high.
Mm.
So I started this last week, and a lot of conversations one of the conversations that I heard was this idea of co-teaching, which is essentially having two teachers in a classroom. And there's different versions of that, because I guess the school I'm at has a new principal, and I guess that's something she wants to more implement is co-teaching, which the counselors I'm working with have some pushback to that, because they said that they've tried that before and it didn't necessarily work super well.
Can you explain like what co-teaching is and why it would improve things?
So I'm not super fluent on it, but from my understanding of gleaning from this short conversation I overheard, is essentially it's having two, fully qualified teachers in the classroom at the same time teaching the same lesson. And so the benefit of that, the couple benefits, at least theoretically, is that you have two teachers. So if you have one group of students that is struggling a little more, one of the teachers can work on small groups, right? So you can have one teacher who's doing kind of the main lesson, the big lesson for everyone who's kind of at one level, and then if you have a group that is struggling a little more, the other teacher can pull them aside and do the same lesson essentially at the same time, but at a slower pace or with more involvement or something like that.
Yes. So what would be the benefit to co-teaching over just doubling the number of teachers and having half the class size?
Space is one of them, right? There's only so much room in schools for classrooms.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So if you can't build more classrooms, which is expensive and takes time and space, then you can have instead two teachers in the same classroom. I'm speaking on a topic I don't know a lot about. Like I said, this is mostly what I gleaned from overhearing a conversation. But from what I heard from my supervisor is that it didn't really work super well, partially because it kind of depends too on the teachers that are doing it, how their relationship is. Are they able to kind of bounce off each other, or are they a bit like butt heads a little bit?
Well, I think that depends, or that would come into play in a lot of things, like even like team teaching, or like at mom school, they're passing students between subjects and stuff so that a teacher can kind of specialize on one subject and stuff. I mean, that only works as well as the teachers communicate and work well together. And if they don't actually want to work together...
Josh is turning on the fan. It's getting a little warm in here.
Yeah, I was dying.
Well, but so another strategy that they were talking about that the counselor was suggesting is this idea of, it's called pushing in, which I'm not super... Yeah. I'm not super fluent on what that means, but it's a similar concept as co-teaching, except it's more of having a teacher come in more as a support aid instead of two main teachers. It's like having a main teacher and then an assistant teacher, essentially. That's my interpretation. I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but having someone, so instead of two dominant personalities, essentially, you have one main one and then essentially like an aide coming in, but who's a teacher and who's qualified to teach the stuff to also help out. Mm-hmm. So that's one kind of new paradigm that I've been hearing is on the uptick of a way to address this problem that Josh mentioned of not everybody learns the same way, not everybody learns at the same speed, and that is a big problem. Is you have one teacher in a class of generally nowadays 35 kids,
which is way too many.
Which that one teacher can only do so much, right?
Because it's like some students are ahead and they're getting bored off of what you're already doing. Most of the class is probably keeping up, and then you have a small portion that's like falling behind.
Yeah, and one, you have to teach what you have to teach, mm-hmm. and you only have so much time to do so. And two, you have to figure out, okay, who can I then address, right? And so something I learned as a sub, or that I realized as a sub to me, is that I think every classroom should have two adults. Like, you have a teacher and an aide at least. Like, just having an extra adult in the room to go around, even just help out, help answer questions, help pass out stuff, take small groups if necessary. Like, I think that should be the standard. So, like, this push towards co-teaching and pushing in and whatever kind of like avenue that develops, I think that's a great idea, and I think that's a direction that should be going anyway. Is it perfect right now? Probably not, because I think it's kind of a newer concept, and there seem to be reasons that it's not always working as well. But I think in general, that's definitely a direction. Even just for behavior problems, especially in elementary school, just having an extra adult in the room to address behavior problems, to talk to students, to pull students out, to do whatever is so beneficial. Like whenever I'm in a special ed classroom or like TK classroom because they get an extra aid, like any classrooms that get aids, it's so much nicer just having even just one extra adult.
But like
I think every classroom should have that.
But a huge problem with that is like budget, right? Because now we have to pay all these people.
It is budget
to actually do that, and it's like, where does that come from?
Right, and that's the problem because education budgets in general, whether it's federal in this country or even state level, are not high, and they're often getting cut more and more, and so that's a huge problem. Is that there's not enough money in education currently, and there's continually less money in education to support, and I think that is a big issue with education and why it's not great, because it's not being funded. Right? There aren't resources that we need. There aren't enough aids for special ed classrooms and for students who aren't in special ed but who still need aids for whatever academic or social reasons. There's not enough teachers. There's not enough office staff. There's not enough yard duties and yard supervisors. There's not counselors. Like, I'm getting into counseling, and all elementary schools in this area where we live, one district fired all their counselors entirely, and another district doesn't hire counselors. They hire social workers. And the difference is essentially...
One is qualified.
Well, they're both qualified, but social workers can do extended therapy. So it's not just counseling, they can do therapy. But also social workers are more reactive to situations. And counselors are typically trying to be more proactive and preventative. And so that's but there isn't support for counselors, especially in elementary schools right now. Junior highs generally have counselors. High schools have had counselors for a long time. But in elementary schools, that's still something that is developing. But the reason is because there's not resources for them, right? They don't want to pay counselors. They don't want to staff those positions. So because there's no funding or whatever the reason is. And that is a huge thing, is there's not enough funding for the programs and the support systems that are necessary. And I think that's a huge hurdle.
Yeah, they can't all be like a situation with... You guys ever see Mr. Rogers'
Neighborhood?
Not Neighborhood, but Mr. Roger, the guy, he went to, I forget what it was, like the state government or whatever, and wanted to talk to them about the education and how funds kept getting cut. And he was a big advocate. It's like, no, education is important, and we need to pay more attention to it and have more funds for it. We can't just keep cutting them the funds more and more. And Mr. Rogers being a big figure, just in a lot of people's life, because he had Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which was a very big thing back in the day that helped a lot of younger people during the time to grow up to be good people. And he was just all about, like, just be kind to each other, be helpful. You know, if something's bad, be aware of why it's bad and how you can help out in the situation. Some situations you can't help and all that. He was a very big figure for a lot of people. Yeah. So when he went into the government to talk to them about just not cutting funds, he just didn't want them to cut the funds. Like, we already have bare minimum. If you don't have the money, that's fine. Just don't cut more funds. He went in there and he ended up getting a lot more funds for them, just in general. Yeah. And it was just a really big move. It's like this man who has like a lot of power, just because he's in the limelight and all that stuff. He uses his position to help out in something that he really cares about, which was education. Yeah. And it was like, Mr. Rogers, like what a great man.
Yeah, which we need more of.
And it's sad how much people undervalue education.
Yeah.
Or like think like, oh, the school system doesn't actually deserve the funding because it's not doing well, and it's like, well, if you take money out of it, it's definitely not going to get better.
No. But that was also part of the conversation that me and Ryan were having yesterday too in our car ride, because I think education is very important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should be very like proactive about people wanting to learn more stuff and do things. However, there's a lot of things that people don't know they need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said in the beginning, like with like math and reading and basic stuff like that, that's basic stuff that everyone should know at some point. And then there are certain things that we emphasize too much priority over where it doesn't really affect a lot of people.
Like what?
So
Wait, before you move on, I just want to share a funny anecdote that I was reminded of when you were sharing that. So my supervisor has this little political cartoon on one of her filing cabinets that says, it's something, I don't remember verbatim, but it's something to the effect of like, oh, I have a revolutionary budget idea for schools. What if we fully fund them, and for prisons we have them use box tops and Target coupons to fund them instead of the other way around? Because like that's a whole thing in like America is like, oh, cut out your box tops and you turn them in and you maybe get like a textbook or whatever. And it's like, why are we funding schools through cereal box tops while prisons or whatever get fully funded from the government? And it's like that's the mindset, right?
Well, also prisons wouldn't need so much money if we weren't imprisoning people for dumb things.
Which
but
maybe
that's
if
a
we
side
increased
topic.
education.
there's also a lot of educations in prisons too.
There
for
is
a lot of people
of
who want to
education
reform.
in prisons,
Yeah, which is good.
Which is great.
Which is great.
I love that because
But, like,
a lot of people who go to prison.
They should get that help before they go to prison. Like, you shouldn't...
No, absolutely. They should help before the problem becomes a problem.
It's like, treating a disease after you have it instead of preventing it in the first place, right?
That being said, there are just still people out there who, they're in a bad spot
I'm
in their
not
life.
saying it's a fix-all problem, but I think it would help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
I think they're both great ideas.
Yes.
Before we go back to you, I did have a couple,
Notes.
controversial questions that I wanted to ask.
Okay,
Sure.
let's go.
So first question is something that we talked about in our Discord chat was, what do you think about how some people want to take the money that their student gets for public school and putting that in a private school instead?
What
Like,
do you mean?
so if you-
expand on that?
So each student, there's a budget for each student at a school, right? Like the school gets X amount of money per child,
It's based
budget
on,
allocated, right?
it's based on attendance. When
So,
students show up, that school gets money for each student that shows up that day.
So let's
That's
say
why attendance is so important.
for the whole
for the
year,
school.
let's say for this one student, the school gets $10,000.
Okay.
Basically, what some parents want is the ability to be able to put their student in a private school, and the government money that goes to the public school would now go to the private school for that student.
To fund the private
Yeah.
school instead of self-funding.
I think that would just make private schools into public schools.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? Is like the reason why people go private schools typically is because they feel it's a better education.
Yeah.
Right? Like, would we all agree that that's a common reason why a parent would put their kid in
I
a
mean, I
private
think
school?
that's the perceived
Is that
notion is that private is better than public.
okay,
Right.
Yeah.
So, but then to hit on what Josh was saying, which is what I was thinking is, but if we appropriately fund public schools to the point where they're where they should be, then there might the reason that wouldn't be a reason, right? Like a reason to go to private school would be perhaps it's a smaller school and maybe your kid does better in smaller classes.
Or it could be even that the private school is more focused on a specific thing.
Or it's like a Christian school or whatever,
Yeah.
and you want your kid to have Bible study,
Yeah.
which doesn't happen in public school.
Okay,
But that's an interesting point. Is I don't know.
but do you think that should be? Because my answer is no.
Yeah.
Like that should not be a thing.
Right.
Because first of all, you're taking public taxpayer money and you're putting it into a private institution
good
who
point.
doesn't have to follow any of the laws of education because they're their own entity.
Right.
Right?
That's a good point.
So, they can teach religion and stuff like that, which is fine if you want to go there, but we shouldn't be using government tax money to teach religion because separation of church and state is a thing.
Should be.
And it's supposed to be a thing. And that's like one of the cornerstones, but also like because they don't have to follow any of the rules, they shouldn't get any of the money from the government.
I would say I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a really good point about like that money comes from paying taxes, and so taking taxpayers' money so you could send your kid to a private school isn't really fair.
Yeah.
And yes, you can say, well, anybody could do that then, but then again, then what makes it different than public school? But it's just for profit, and now we're just paying these private companies essentially instead of putting it back into the community, which is kind of the point of taxes in the first place.
Yeah. Multiple points of view. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah. That's a good point.
But yeah.
That's what we were talking about the other day, and that was my main point. As I'm like, first of all, if it's private, that means they can teach whatever they want. They can teach that Hitler was the Messiah of, whatever, and
it's extreme, but yeah, I guess so.
I'm intentionally extreme, but
I mean,
they could teach whatever they wanted,
isn't there still curriculum though for private schools, or can they? I don't actually know this. I don't know much about private schools. Can they just make up their own curriculum? Is there no?
I mean, I think they're not as bound to the laws or the like Secretary of Education and all that stuff. But I mean, we can look that up if you want.
Yeah, that isn't because I know that like if it's a private school, they don't have to conform to like the California state standards, right?
Yeah.
Or the federal standards necessarily, but I feel like they can't just teach whatever they want, right?
No, they still have to abide by a certain standard.
The state of California does not regulate private schools like it does public schools.
So it can
at all.
So it can literally just teach
it's not the. It just says it's not the same. There is much more freedom and flexibility for private programs to be catered to specific educational philosophies.
Got it.
Okay. So they overall should probably do just have a general like things that everyone would learn, and then the special things.
But part of the reason people do like private is because they're like, oh well, like let's say Common Core is like the thing that the government's saying, and people are like, oh well, I don't like that. That doesn't make sense to me. So they put their student in private school, but it's like you chose to do that. You shouldn't. It shouldn't be paid for by the government.
I agree with that. I would agree with that.
Another question I wanted to bring up, and I think we've talked about this briefly before, or at least I talked about it with Mom once. She's like, that'd be an interesting idea, is because teachers spend so many extra hours grading, preparing for their class, and all of this stuff, my idea was like, what if we made teachers hourly paid instead of salary?
I mean, I don't know if that's the solution, but I definitely strongly feel like teachers work way more than they get paid for.
Well, because
because they stay late, they come in early, they work on the weekends, they work in the evenings, even after they leave school. Like, and that's not even accounting for like all the meetings, the grading, like everything. They work so much more, and it's like, oh well, your salary, so that's in your budget, but it's not because they don't get paid enough to even validate that.
Well, and this came up because like I support people at work, they're hourly because it basically protects them from if there's an overload of support cases, they're not working extra for free essentially. They're getting paid to actually take on those cases and support it if it takes over their 8-hour time, and you get paid overtime. Like that's the protection that hourly pays. Like salary is definitely nice for many reasons, but hourly would protect them a lot, I think, from being overworked and not really getting the payoff.
I definitely think that would, at least compensation monetarily would work. I think something needs to be done. And I know Mom and I were talking about this once because, there's a push in general, or not a push, but a movement towards recently going to like 4-day work weeks, right? And so in education, especially in teaching, like that's been an interesting conversation that I've heard some teachers talk about is, okay, well, how would that work for us? Like, obviously, we want 4-day work weeks, but now we're cutting down our teaching time, our education time.
You're losing a fifth of the teaching time.
Right, and so how would that work? Would that just mean we have longer days, the 4 days? What would that? And Mom and I have talked about this a little bit, and like one idea we came up, or that we were thinking of that I can remember right now, because this was like a couple months ago or something, was like Fridays, let's say theoretically, would be a day where it's kind of an optional day, essentially. Like kids could come in, that could be like the PE day, so PE teachers come in that day to do PE, and so you have a day dedicated to that instead of fitting in your PE hours like wherever you can during the week. It's like Friday mornings is PE time.
Or Friday all day could just be like, that's the day for extracurriculars. Like where, like even computer skills, because computer labs aren't really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Just to help students who maybe need help. Like it could be a day to help you catch up with whatever you wanted.
Yeah, but then also like while that's going on, teachers can come in and do their grading those days and have meetings those days and do all that extra stuff on those days. So it's still kind of a 5-day work week, but it's like a 4-day instructional week, and like maybe Fridays is just half day. Like you only work in the morning to do your meetings, do some grading, get what you need to get done, and then you can go or whatever. But I do think that that's an interesting way too. But I don't know.
Do you know in countries that have tried 4-day work weeks, did that include school?
To my knowledge, I don't know of any. Actually, I think Mom was saying something that there was a school district somewhere that tried 4-day work weeks, and I think it was fine. I don't remember though. From what I know is it's been just like typical companies that have tried going
like
4-day work weeks. And again, as we mentioned, I'm pretty sure on this podcast before, it's been successful and it's a great idea, and it's.
In case any of you, this is your first time watching or something, just want to give the background. Our mom has been an elementary school teacher since we were in
for over 20 years,
first grade, 20 years or so. And then our aunt has also been an elementary school teacher for like 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
So I think that does give us kind of a unique perspective on the educational system.
Yeah.
And then his sister's a public school teacher. She used to be a private school teacher.
She did, yeah, and she hated it.
Yeah. And I've been a sub for 1.5 years, and I'm now in school to be a counselor, so I've been around education more.
And I worked as a tutor and for private learning as well. So.
And I worked as a behavior interventionist for kids.
So we really do have a lot of educational background.
We have a lot of educational background and also different perspectives on specific parts.
Because we've all been in different parts of the system.
Yeah. So we have a variety of things to look at.
Yeah, I've been a part of a lot of supplemental learning.
Yeah. It's nothing like teaching someone something that you forgot how to do.
Dude, that's the life of being a sub, man. You show up and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing today. And you look at the sub plans and you're like, I don't know how to figure this out. I gotta figure out how to read this teacher edition. I gotta figure out how to teach this new math. I don't know how to. There's literally been so many things where, like, especially in math, because they do things differently now. Mm-hmm. And, like, I know that that's a thing that people say, like, oh, math is different. Math is different.
Nah.
The way they teach math is not always just, like, 1 + 1 = 2. Or whatever. It's, like, splitting things up, and it's so strange.
And it's, like, why does 1 + 1 = 2?
It's really strange.
It's getting philosophical.
Well, it's becoming, from what I've seen on, like, the Common Core and stuff, is like it's much more. There's a lot more English in math.
Well, there's a lot more steps too. There's a lot more steps, and like there'd be times where I'm teaching a math lesson, and I'll straight up be like, "I never learned it this way. I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. So I'm gonna teach you the way I know how to do this, and what I'm reading from the book as I'm scanning." As we're doing this lesson, and if you have questions, I will do my best. But I can't guarantee I can answer it because I literally did not learn how to do this way.
Yeah, no.
Because there's different strategies and there's different methods, and they break things up different ways, and it's just like.
But I do want to say though, like one of the things that I think was really helpful in college was that we did have a learning center that was paid for by the school.
Yeah.
And anybody could come for help with like pretty much any STEM class is what we did, and then we had a writing center. But it was like any math or science type of class, we had tutoring hours, and you can come get help with anything. And I think that'd be really, and especially because you're learning from your peers, so it's not like a teacher or anything.
Well, that's a thing that's been lessened too, is tutoring. Like you're not allowed to, I found this out this week during my internship. You're not allowed to like post like tutoring connections anymore. Like if it, like in at the middle school I'm at, if somebody wants tutoring, like you can't post like, oh, here are the places you can go to get tutoring.
When that?
Safety?
It has something to do with like privacy concerns for students and like matching people up with kind of strangers or whatever, even if it's vetted companies and stuff like that. There's some kind of privacy concerns. And I know like one of the ladies in the office was saying that she used to be in charge of that and it would be kind of stressful because it's like, oh, you know, like I know this company, because I mentioned like, oh, can we partner with Mathnasium or whatever like that, you know, because there's a Mathnasium not too far from that school, and I'm like, I know they do math tutoring and a lot of students are struggling in math, like I've been looking at the transcripts and stuff, and it's just like, it's like a privacy thing and like a protection thing, and like I get where it's coming from, but like it does kind of it makes it more difficult for faculty to help.
So would a company like Mathnasium be? Because I know, like, you know, when we were in school, you know, you had like your cubby and you get flyers for so many different like outside things. Can they still do that?
I mean,
to be like, hey, you know, you struggling? Like,
I would
you know,
say yes, but that would have to
like
be
Kuma and Sylvan, all those places.
That would have to be done through the district, I believe. Like there would have to be some kind of like negotiation between the company and the district, and then the district would decide like that this is like a partnership. And I think it's possible, but just what I've noticed is that it's less prevalent, I guess, because of safety concerns, it seems to be, which is valid. Because, you know, you can have somebody going like, oh yeah, I'm a tutor, you know, call me.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, here's my review online, but it's like, can I really trust this person? Like, do I know this person? So, like, I get where it's coming from, but, like, that just reminded me that, like, that is kind of a barrier, a more prevalent barrier.
Two things I want to say on that is, like, first of all, like, tutoring centers, I feel like, would be a lot safer than, like, going to somebody's house. So, like, you go to Mathnasium, Sylvan, Kuman, they have, like, a center, and sometimes, you know, it's multiple students to, like, one instructor or whatever.
I think, though, what I'm thinking for that I'm thinking right now is it would be a money thing, right? Because chances are those companies aren't going to do it pro bono. So there'd have to be some compensation, so then it goes back to the district probably not wanting to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the tutoring companies just want the advertising. It's a marketing campaign, right?
Yeah.
And the more students that know for it or ask for it, the more likely.
I mean, said the same thing.
The other thing I would say is, like, it'd be nice if, like, you know, we had after-school programs or whatever where we would play games or stuff for an hour. It'd be cool if, like, maybe the school was able to bring in people. So you're not sending anybody to anybody's house and they're in a public, safe environment, but they could get the help they needed, like, after school or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing with that too then is you need either like a teacher or some kind of staff to either be in their classroom and the people come to that classroom, or like a cafeteria or something to supervise. Mm-hmm. And so again, it then comes down to money because you got to pay people and logistics. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. Like I was thinking about this stuff too. But that is, again, it's just more negotiation.
I think it could even be like a cool, like, thinking of elementary school specifically. It could be like a cool partner program for high schoolers with elementary school kids. So, like, high schoolers coming in after school to help these elementary school kids. Because first of all, that's not as dangerous as matching them with like an adult.
But here's the devil's advocate to that. Because the middle school tried that.
Oh, did they really?
And the problem is the high schoolers wouldn't show up. They were super inconsistent. Like, even if they signed up and agreed, they maybe come once, maybe, and like they were never consistent. Well, so like, that's the problem, because it is volunteer, so you can't force kids to do it. You can't say, oh, if you sign up, you have to come every time, because it's a volunteer thing.
I just think about also what we did with
it.
Mrs. Jefferson, shout out, band teacher from elementary school, is that when we were in high school, every Tuesday we would go to the advanced band and help them and play music with them.
Yeah, but again, that was volunteer, and that was because we wanted to. So, like, you know, I mean, the way you would go about that is you appeal to, like, the honor society kids or the kids
music society
who need hours for something, volunteer hours, and you say, this is an option you could do for that. But again, you then come down to the fact that they're still going to be inconsistent.
Yeah.
You have some that will show up every time, and you'll have some who will show up once. But then you have kids coming from the junior high in this situation, right, who show up, and then there's no tutors for them because the high schoolers don't show up. So, because that is something that they actually tried, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And then she was like, yeah, no, it was just really inconsistent. So it makes it difficult.
I wonder if part of the reason they're inconsistent, though, is that, you know, the high school's getting to the school. Like if they don't drive or anything, it's.
Yeah, I don't know the
reason, but
I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure a lot of high schoolers just don't care.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's definitely a reason, but yeah, you also need to get the more responsible people who are like.
And
like
I don't know the logistics of the program. That was as much of the conversation as
But I do think that would be cool to see
I think
like
it's a good idea.
high schoolers, like what we did regularly, go and help out these people struggling. And...
Is that what you guys did for your volunteer hours or whatever?
We
That's
just
something
did
that
it
you
for
guys had
fun.
Well, we did it for
our
fun.
friend did it.
So we were in a club called Key Club for the first 3 years.
Wait, real quick. Did you guys have to do volunteers, or is that like
No.
something? No, you guys didn't have. That's weird. My high school
It wasn't.
had to.
No, it was only for.
I
like,
know some
clubs.
high schools required it, but yeah, ours was
my high
only
school
for,
was mandatory.
for clubs.
That's becoming, I think, a more common thing.
Okay.
It's probably to help with college applications because they love volunteer hours.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
I
so
just
like
wanted to ask.
we
I
had
didn't
like
know.
our
That's a good question.
A through G requirements. Like this is what
makes me stand
what
out.
the transcript looks good.
Yeah.
Like you've taken all these classes, you've tried.
Well, the A through G is essentially the high school graduation requirements.
Yeah.
That is what you need in order to
Well,
get your high school diploma.
No, because all the people wearing green robes did not meet their A through G.
Right, and they don't get their diploma then.
No, they all get their diploma.
I don't think so. I think
A
you
through
have
G-
no, but see, I think you have to do either summer school or pass the GED. At the graduation, they will give them out or give out the booklet things so that people aren't left out. But
yeah, but they say like you need to. Meet
you
these
have to do
requirements.
something in order
Yeah.
to make up
think
what the
so.
definite. Yes, you
They do.
Because in order to get the gold robe that I got, is the requirement is meeting the A through G requirements.
Yeah, but like if you're not planning on going to college afterwards,
No, but it's still to get your GED and stuff. In order to do that, you need to meet those requirements. In order to be considered a
are
high
you
school
100%
graduate,
on that?
I'm like 90% on that.
No, you put that now. But yeah.
Because that's the point of the A through G requirements. Is that's essentially what you need to graduate high school. At least that's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I haven't done high school yet.
You'll get there.
Hopefully in fall.
But yeah,
My phone is not letting me.
it's okay.
But
Okay, let's bring it back.
Yeah.
well, so I did have one more question.
Okay.
So when you were talking about co-teaching and all this stuff, and then I couldn't remember this question, I finally wrote it down because that's okay. So you were talking about having like another teacher to kind of supplement the main teacher.
Yeah.
And like
Or to even straight up co-teach, like
pull
teach the lesson
pull
at the
students
same
aside
time.
who are struggling or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know at least when I was a student, a lot of what teachers were doing is using students that are performing well or really understanding the material, and they'd have them take a group aside to go help.
Unheard of.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw that.
You never had that?
Never had that. That is unheard of me.
Oh.
I can see that because
My teachers always had me teaching math to other kids.
So here's the thing.
I never
I would
saw
not
that.
trust that with the group of high schoolers that I went to with, because they would be like, yeah, well, I'll teach them how to be, and then they'd just be talking to each other and not teach anything.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the hard thing about doing peer stuff is they're peers,
They're
right?
peers,
They're
yeah.
not educators. And that's helpful in some situations like tutoring, right? But I think that, and again, I think that that's maybe a problem. If you need to rely on your students to teach your students, I think that's
That's already a
There's-
fundamental problem. to
right.
that.
Yeah. I don't think it's inherently a bad idea in certain circumstances, but I don't think that that should be the solution is, oh, I need more help in the class, let me pick my high students to teach it. Because that's not the student's job either, to
It's
be
not.
teaching.
No.
Their job is to still be learning. And yes, you can say the old adage of, you really know you've mastered something if you can teach it, sure. But again, that's not the point. That's not their job right
It's
now.
not. No.
So having two teachers or a teacher and like some kind of educational aid or whatever, I think is, from my experience and being in a classroom with aides and with other adults, super helpful. And I can see how that's a paradigm moving forward, is trying to implement co-teaching or pushing in teachers, stuff like that. And I know that like they can do that with special ed teachers too, because a big like goal of special ed program is what's called mainstreaming, which is bringing their kids back into general classes, right? Instead of being in special ed classes or whatever it's called at the school, to mainstream them back into the general population. And a way you could do that, especially in like middle schools or high schools where teachers have different periods and can have off periods, is you can have a period where a sped teacher mainstreams and co-teaches in a general ed classroom with some of their population and some of the gen ed population.
That was a very common thing that happened when I was working as a behavioral interventionist.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I had classes where it was like part special needs and part regular ones.
Yeah.
And you really get to see how like certain special needs kids, and I feel like kids in general tend to like latch onto a specific person and they're like their best friends or whatever.
Right.
And it's really helpful when that person they latch onto is also like very understanding of like what's going on and be like, oh, here, let me help you out with that. Like they're a nice little middle ground for certain things.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, okay, so my phone finally loaded.
Okay.
So apparently it's at the discretion of the school, but A through G is mainly the minimum requirements to get into college. Not all high schools require A through G to get your diploma. In fact, most don't seem to do that, but it is like, it's like the golden standard, but if you don't reach all of that, there's like a slightly lesser requirement.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, because if you Google A through G, most places don't even talk about high school. They're like, this is the minimum to be accepted into a public university.
Well, I think that segues into a conversation Josh and I were having last night about college.
How college?
Because we were talking about how this whole rat race to college, right? Especially in high school and even before that, in some cases of like creating this mentality in kids and in students that like the end all be all is getting into college and getting into the best college, and you have to have a 4.5 GPA, and you need to have 7 extracurriculars, and you need to have 500 hours of volunteering, and you need to ace the ACT and the SAT, and you need to do all this stuff, and you
DUI
and the BLTs.
Exactly.
Most importantly, the BLTs. But like, you need to do all this stuff, and you need to work so hard, and you need to be valedictorian, and you need to do all this stuff so you can get into the best
We
school.
all need to be valedictorian.
I mean, that's the push, right? It's like you have to do the absolute best you can at 100% of the time so you can get into the best school, because otherwise you're not going to be successful.
And newsflash to everybody, the name of your college does not matter to anybody except for really your first job out of college. Like, that's really the way it pulls the biggest weight. Or if you're going, or maybe if you go to an Ivy League, it pulls a lot more weight throughout the years. But nobody's ever asked me about my education
Never.
after my first job, because they're like, okay, now all we care about is your work experience.
Even my first job didn't care. I volunteered there first, and then I got hired there.
Yeah, well,
but even for volunteering, like, they're just like, oh, you're in school? Okay, cool. And I'm like, yeah.
And for my first job, I actually got hired by an alumni of the school, and he was,
But
really
like, that's kind of the point we were talking about, is there's all this pressure, and it's kind of unwarranted, right?
Well,
like, it doesn't, like, it's good, like we were saying, and Josh can chime in, is it's good to succeed. It's good to try your best.
Yeah.
It's good to put in the effort. Education is important, and you should be trying in school, and you should be paying attention, and you should be doing your best to do your best.
It's good to aim for a high, like, shoot for the stars, right?
Yeah, yes, it is. But when there's too much pressure put onto it, that causes a backlash behind it. Because if you don't reach whatever you need to reach because of all the pressure that was put onto you, people go into states of depressions or other stuff that just is more harmful to them than it actually is if you be like, try your best, which is all we really want you to do, as opposed to be like, no, you have to be the best.
Exactly. And that's what we were talking about. And the thing is, I feel like, and then I'll let you talk, is just that I feel like there's all this pressure to be the best and have the best, and kids just literally kill themselves in high school just trying to get into a great college, and then you get there and then you're burnt out. And there's so much dropout rate.
I've been burnt out for 10 years.
And then all of that work was for what? And even if you don't drop out, even if you then, you're still not going to be great because you're still burnt out, but maybe you push through and C's get degrees and we're all happy for you. Was it worth it at the end? And I feel like 9 times out of 10, no, I don't think it is worth it. And then, but then what too?
C's get degrees was like the funniest thing that everybody in college said.
It's still a thing.
No, I know, but I mean, like, because it's just like, you know, we're here to learn, and you actually want to like, you know, learn the material so that you'll be good at your job, right?
But that's the point.
But it's just funny that a lot of people, by the time they get to college now, they're like, yeah, I want to be able to do that, but like, you know, all I have to do is at least get that
But
C.
that's the point.
And I'm just like,
because the goal is not to learn the material.
It's to get the degree.
The goal is to pass and get the degree and move on.
And to get the job.
Because it's all goal oriented in these arbitrary goals. It's not to learn. It's not to find a career path. It's not to figure out what you want to do. It's to take the test, pass the class, get the piece of paper that says you did that, and then move on.
So I do wanna add one thing though, is like, yeah, the goal is to get the degree, C's get degrees, whatever. But like one thing that my first boss really did like about my school experience is that he said, and I thought this was a very unique way of looking at it, is that like, so I had like a 3.9 in college, right? And what he said is that I know that you're gonna give whatever the customer requirement wants, is because in school your customer is your teacher, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to fit their requirements in order to pass or get a good grade, right? So he's like, if you were able to do that and get like a 3.9, I know that you're gonna be able to, you know, finish whatever the requirements are. And I thought that was a very unique connection that like most people don't see, and I just wanted to.
But I think that like that still kind of correlates, is like, the goal shouldn't just be to pass. Like, the goal should be to learn. The goal should be to figure out what you want to do. But having this goal be first, just the goal to get into college, right? That's what so much, like 4 years at least of your life, which at that point is a quarter of your life, is spent just trying to reach this goal and going above and beyond to just get into college. And then what happens after that? You reach that goal. But you put all your effort into doing that. So now you're at nothing. And now you got to do college now. And so now it's like, okay, well now I got to graduate college. So then you put 125% in to push through to get to college. And then you're even more burnt out. And it's like, is that actually creating better, quote unquote, workers, better people by just forcing them to just excel and excel and excel and shoot for the stars, when then you just get a bunch of people who are burnt out? Like, nobody in my degree who got an anthropology degree, nobody that I know of is working in anthropology, because everyone was burnt out. Everyone just kind of stuck with the jobs that they had. There's some people still in retail. One person's a teacher, like, because they were just so done by the time we graduated.
So, okay, so I do want to say something on what you were saying is, like, you know, just teaching you how to be a worker is what, because that's something that Brie was saying. She's like, school, it feels like, was initially, and I'm sorry, Brie, if I'm getting this wrong, because she did correct me once, but from what I understand, what she was saying is that, you know, school was originally created or kind of shaped because it was a place to put your kids while you're working.
Sure.
And a lot of people do see it that way, especially when education isn't as strong in that area. It does feel like this is just public daycare. Right? Which is what a lot of people think of it. And, like, especially during COVID, that was a big thing. It's like, oh, well, now I have to watch my own kid all day.
Right.
And, like, and, you know, there's that big movement in the beginning of COVID, like, we appreciate our teachers so much.
Which is so funny how quickly that fizzled out and swung so wildly the other direction to parents then returning with even more, like, visceral towards teachers. And, oh, all teachers are terrible and they don't know what they're doing and they're not doing. And it's like, 3 minutes ago, you were just praising teachers for how great of a job they do.
There were all those viral TikToks of like, oh my god, I don't know how you put up with my kid. I can't.
That lasted 3 months, and then it swung the other direction. It's like, Nothing changed. Teachers still have to put up with
Because
this.
these parents can't put up with their own kids because they're not teaching them anything.
No, because they don't want to, too. That's a huge... And that's not every teacher. I was in a meeting, or every parent, I mean. I was in a meeting the other day with parents talking about one of their kids who, like, needs extra support. And both of the parents, and I think one of them was a step-parent, but, like, super great, like, super involved. The dad even asked who's the step-parent. He was like, to go back to the math thing, he's like, this math is different than I know it. Like, is there any way that I can be taught how to do this math so I can help my daughter with this math? And I'm like, that's an excellent question. Like, good for you for, like, being, he's like, I'm always helping her with her homework, and I'm always trying to be on top
Love
of her.
that.
And he's like,
but
he's like, but this math, like, I don't know how to do it, so I can't help her. And she's like, Dad, I don't get it. And he's like I don't either.
Well,
So it's not every parent, but there are a lot of parents out there who just couldn't care less.
I don't remember what TV show it was, but I remember it was like the son was having like really trouble with his homework, and then dad it was the same thing. I can't do this. So he stayed up all night once just reading the textbook, trying to understand the way of math, so that in the morning he could help his kid with his homework before school. And you're just like, but it's also crazy to me how that's such an outlier.
It is.
Is like people just aren't as involved with their kids as they should be most of the time. Well, I get that also. By the time you're a parent, like, we're burnt out. We're not even parents. I couldn't imagine also being responsible for children and helping them do all these extra things, because I'm like, I can barely do the bare minimum for myself most of the time, right? So, like, to have to be responsible for another person on top of that.
Yeah, but that's also a choice you make. Generally. Not always, but generally, if you have kids, it's because you choose to have kids. You made that choice.
Or you don't know how to
Well, that's why I said generally. That's why I said generally. I know it's not every situation, but typically, it's a choice that you make. And a lot of parents, they just don't really care, and then they yell at the teachers because they're like, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing." It's like, well,
what do
you know?
Half of education in the school system is it's really the job of a teacher and a parent, right? Like, the teacher teaches them fundamentals, and then the parent's supposed to, like, help them solidify, bring it home. Like, education's not an 8-hour thing; it's a 24-hour thing.
Yes.
And you have to be learning and reinforcing all these things all the time, because or else they're not gonna stick.
Well, that's the thing, right? Teachers aren't the parents. The teachers are the teachers, and it's their job to teach. And then it's the parents' job, like you said, to reinforce, to continue talking. And the big thing is just, like, talking to your kids, reading to your kids, especially at, like, young age, like when they're born, even when they're born.
That Beethoven in the womb.
As soon as the kid is, they're absorbing. And kids are so absorbing.
They are the world's best sponges.
They are. And if you need to talk to them, and you need to read to them, and you need to teach them, and you need to do all this stuff to them, you can't just throw an iPad at them and sit them in the corner. Like, that's not...
Can I put a sponge on my thumbnail?
You do whatever you want. You're a thumbnail, man. But, like, that's the thing is, like, parents don't want to do that. They don't want to be parents. Some of them just want to be friends. They don't want their kid to not like them, so they don't want to discipline them.
And it might not even be they don't want to do. They might just not have the energy or time to be able to do it, which is
maybe, but that's not the teacher's fault either.
No,
so yelling at the teacher and yelling at the administrators is not solving the problem.
I mean, I'm not saying that's an excuse to do that, but I'm just saying I think that's also, a symptom of the society we live in nowadays, is that some parents have to work 2-3 shifts a day just to be able to, like,
but I'm going to tell you now from my experience, those parents aren't the problem.
No, I know.
It's the parents that don't do that. It's the yoga moms and whatever who are pretentious and don't care. They're more of the problem. It's not the hard-working ones that are the problem. Those are the ones who are generally more apologetic. That's like, man, I'm sorry. Like, I know. I just have been at work all the time. I have to work all night. And it's like, you're not the problem.
No, yeah.
So it is a symptom in some cases, but in some cases it's not. It's apathy, and it's arrogance, and it's pretentiousness, and it's, I don't want to deal with my kid. My kid's not the problem. And you have a lot of that too. Oh, my kid's not the problem. It's all the other problems. It's like, no, your kid is 100% the problem, and you need to address it. But you're not addressing it.
And those are also the parents that were probably screaming when COVID happened. And they're like, oh my god, now I have to deal with my own little demon.
Almost 100%. Yeah, but then again, the role reversal is hilarious. That 3 months later, then it's villainizing teachers again, even though you just were praising them for what they have to put up with and you can't deal with your own kid, and teachers have to deal with that kid plus 35 other kids, and you're screaming at them? Like, I don't know. I think that's a huge problem with education. In my experience, even at the museum, the biggest problem is the parents. It's not the kids, it's the parents. 100% of the time, parents are the problem. If you're a parent, don't be the problem.
Do better.
Be the solution. And yeah, it's hard, and I get it. And you know, kids are hard, and days are hard, and life is
nobody's
hard.
saying it's easy.
But yelling at teachers,
Don't lash
and yelling
out.
at administrators, and yelling at counselors is not the solution. Yelling at your kid, probably not the solution. Let's work together. Let's be a team. We all want your kid to succeed. We all want your kid to be successful. We all want you to be good too. We all want to be good. Stop yelling at us. Let's work together.
So I want to bring it back a little bit to what we were talking about, like school.
Why am I in this chair?
Well,
Yeah.
This is your episode.
Yeah.
I keep having something to say, but we keep going off on, which is good conversation. But you know, I do want to hit on other
Yeah, no,
things
go
that
for
we
it.
came to.
You're the boss.
But am I? I'm not in the
Yeah.
throne.
You should have been. I don't know why you abdicated.
I don't know.
All right, let's go.
I thought you'd be better at leading this conversation than I would.
You have all. That was so unnecessary, Mister. I have 700.
No, I'm not
questions
saying
I wanna
I'm
keep
doing
talking about.
I'm not saying
You
I'm doing
said
good.
I didn't think I would do better than you
Yeah,
are.
it was a-
while you keep freaking
You
bringing
didn't-
stuff up.
you
I
didn't
wrote
mean-
stuff down. You're not even letting me get to what I want to talk
You
about.
didn't mean it as a kind of like negative comment, but it
But
came
it
off
really
as a
came
negative
out
comment.
as so condescending.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know how else to say it. I'm sorry.
Rude.
But no, I just wanted to bring up. So one of the guys that's in our Discord, he's from Scotland, right? So,
Scotland.
Scotland. But so he brings in, huh?
I can't do it.
Neither can I. Oh, I'm sorry if we offended you, Scottish people.
Oh,
We're
I didn't
also
say
we're
anything.
also Scottish though, so
Technically,
slight pass.
we're okay.
But what he was saying is that in their school system, so they have primary school, which is grades 1 through 7,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have secondary school, which is grades 1 through 6 of those, right? So you basically go to high school at 13, and that year 6 is optional, mostly for people who want to pursue higher education in college and universities and stuff like that. And that a lot of people actually leave after year 4, which would be 11th grade. And then the big exams to help get into university are in year 5. But that a lot of people who drop out after 4, they're not there to pursue like higher education. They're probably going to like trade schools or doing other stuff. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think in general, there should be more accessibility to post-secondary options that aren't college. Because I think that there are a lot, and that's something like in counseling that is becoming more prevalent too, is like for a long time, right, the whole point is you go to high school, go to college. That's what you gotta do, is you gotta go to college, that's the option. But that's not the option. That's not the only option, and it shouldn't be the only option. Because I think we've talked about before, like, school's not for everybody. College isn't for everybody. That's not what every single person wants to do. That's not what every single person needs to do. Not everybody needs to go to college. And so there should be more options in high school or whatever that introduce people to career paths, vocations, whatever, that aren't college. You know what I mean?
The idea of just having options for like a secondary school would be great too for a lot of people, because a lot of things are not going to go away anytime soon. You know, everyone's going to need a tailor.
Everyone's going to need a plumber.
Everyone's going to need a plumber. So everyone's going to need a mechanic of some sort.
Carpenters.
Yeah, as long as we have clothes, we'll need tailors. As long as we have air conditioners, we'll need
air conditioner, HVAC.
Yeah, HVAC people, all that stuff.
And I think it'd be great if they also gave that out as options here in general.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, college is for pursuing a higher education and all these other things and these other things that we won't focus on it. They're there, but we won't tell you.
Well,
about it.
Well, I think for arts too. Like if you want to be a musician, I know that there are art schools and there are like
music
schools and there are film schools and stuff like that, but I think that they should be more prevalent because those are valid career paths too. Or if you want to be an animator, if you want to be a writer, whatever, like you can go to college and you can get a degree in creative writing or in film development or film theory or whatever, but like I feel like even those if it's not STEM, it's kind of pushed to the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so like STEM careers are great. If you like science, you like whatever, great, good for you. Go for it. That's awesome. But there's so many careers out there that aren't STEM.
Well, and it's funny how many people have degrees in like communications and stuff. Like that's the deep. Like a lot of people I met, especially freshman year of college, I'd be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And they're like, "I don't really know what I'm doing, so I have a degree in communications. Like that's my program." And I was like, it's just so interesting to me that that's like the default. Like I went in undeclared because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah. But a lot of schools are impacted for undeclared.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into,
we were impacted.
You were lucky. I feel like to get in.
Well, I mean, I feel like
you had good grades.
Doing everything I did in high school helped out, but
yeah, I just think that in general, like I think that it's cool that there's a system that they have in place. Like, yeah, if you want to go here, stay a couple extra years, take the test, whatever. If you don't, you go figure out what you want to do. You don't have to be here for that long.
I think something that is a good option though is like community colleges and better utilizing those, not just for like an AA degree or to get into a better college 2 years later or whatever, is because you can try so many different things for really low cost, and like there's no punishment really. Like you can go, oh, I want to take a class in this and try this out and do this, and like our high school had kind of like not a bridge program, but there was that one sheet, it was like green or something that we would get, and it had have a list of like all these other occupations. Like one of them was like forensics or like you for being a nurse, and you would take classes at the community college and then also get like real life like experience in that. And I thought that was so cool, but it was so
expanded
small
upon and more universal.
But like if you don't know what to do, I would say don't even go to a 4-year college, right? Because it's just a waste of money at this point.
100%.
Right? Yeah. Unless you're like, oh, I think I want to try one of these 3 things. Like because like for me, I went to Cal Poly, it's 4-year school. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I pretty much spent the summer trying to figure that out, and then decided on computer science when I got there. So I spent the first quarter like trying to get into that program, and I got in by the spring. But like if you really have no idea, just spend a year or 2 at community college taking classes, get general requirements type of stuff out of the way because it's going to cost a lot less at the community college.
Yeah. And
then you can try any other thing you want to do to be like, oh, that seems cool. Let me try that. Wait, maybe that didn't fit for me. Because even our cousin Katie, she really wanted to be a nurse. Like her whole childhood, right? Got to community college, took classes, figured out she hates the sight of blood.
Yeah.
But
it's hard to be a nurse.
But like if she went into a degree like a 4-year college or something for that, I don't know, because I don't think nursing schools were as popular even back then.
More prevalent, yeah.
Because a lot of them were like programs within a college or like whatever. Then all of a sudden you're at this expensive school already, and you're like, well, shoot, now I have to figure out like where I'm switching.
Yeah, I think that's something that also needs to happen is the destigmatization of junior colleges. There's nothing wrong with going to a community college. Figure out what you want to, especially if you don't know what to do. Like I kind of wish I did that instead of just going to a 4-year. I picked science because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I'm like, oh, I gotta go anyway. Realized don't want to do that real quick. And then spent my first year just taking random classes, essentially what I would have done at a junior college, to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I took an anthro class, and I'm like, this is pretty cool, when I switched. And then pretty much did the whole anthro program in 3 years instead of 4 years. But like,
I did that for computer science.
Yeah. So like you don't need to go to a 4-year. But that's again going back to what we were talking about. It's like there's this whole push of like you have to go to a 4-year, you have to go to an Ivy League, you have to get into UC, like especially in California, or even if you're not, like UC schools are very popular schools. They're very good. UCLA, USC is a private school, but it's kind of in that Ivy League UC bubble, top tier echelon. Yeah. You don't have to. Not right away either. Go to a community college for a few years, figure out what you want to do, make sure take your GE so you can get those out of the way. So when you get to that school, you just are taking your core classes and do what you want to do. Like, let's adjust the paradigm here.
So I have a question for Josh.
Yes.
Because I know what our background was, and like that four-year college was probably like the right option for us at the time.
Mm-hmm.
For you, because you did go to community college,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that if college wasn't pushed so hard when you were in high school that you would have done something different?
To like go to college in general or whatever.
Like go to any college, or like maybe you would have gone to trade school if you know those are options, or like.
I would have absolutely gone to a trade school if I knew that was an option.
Yeah.
What do you know? What trade you'd want to do?
No, not necessarily.
Or it would have just been nice to learn about your options in high school.
It would have been nice because that's another thing. A lot of people ask like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" It's like, I don't know. What can I do?
Yeah, because there's so many possibilities, but also you only know what you've heard about, right?
Yeah,
and there
doctor,
could be something.
lawyer.
There could be something
other
perfect
stuff.
for that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah, that was a job that I was qualified to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If I had the option to know what my options were.
Well, that's why I think that high schools, especially, there should be more options for classes and for electives and more room to do those things, right? Because, yeah, you need to take math, you need to take English, you need to take history, you need to take science.
Sure.
Great.
Understandable.
But there should be more options of what you... And I know that also comes down to teachers and staffing and curriculum
budgets.
and budget. And again,
there's a lot
bringing
of
it back to
things.
the beginning of the episode, like there is a lot, but that's exactly what people need, is to know what's out there, to try things, to figure out, is this something I want to do? Is this something that's interesting to me? How can I do it? I'm going to try it out. Oh, I don't know if I really like that, or oh, I love that. This is what I want to do. Like, that needs to be an option instead of just kind of this fairly rigid path to go to college, and then you get there, and then you're like, now what? I guess I do this thing because that's what I said I'm going to
Study
do.
communications for 4 years.
Even though I'm 18 and I don't know anything, and all I've done is school my whole life and learned what you've told me to learn, and I don't actually know what I want to do the rest of my life, and now I have to figure it out and make a decision that is going to kind of matter to an extent. I mean, you can always go back to school, you can always switch your major and stuff like that, but like, it's this very like hard push. But I don't think it needs to be or should be. Because I don't think ultimately it's beneficial.
And it'd also be nicer to get rid of the stigma around like not going to college right away, like taking time to relax or break or like figure stuff out
Absolutely.
for yourself.
I feel like, and back in our day, I don't know how it is for newer generations. Like I can only talk about my nephews, but for my family, like going to college was such like a big deal because you know my parents didn't go to college.
Because it would be the first in your family. And
Yeah, absolutely. And
which is it's still a common thing, I feel like.
yeah, absolutely. But that was like what my parents wanted. They wanted us to pursue a higher education because they didn't have the same opportunities, and I understand that from like a parent's perspective and all that. But that doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
And it didn't work for me because I initially went into college going into a psychology major. Because I thought, oh, people already talked to me about their problems, so why not get paid for it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right?
But overall, I realized that's not necessarily something I want to do for the rest of my life. And now I'm in a weird limbo state where I don't know what I want to do necessarily.
So,
yeah, I spent years there.
And then on top of that, before we move on to anything else, is that the stigma has slowly changed because my nephew, who has just graduated high school probably like 2 years ago, is not going to college. And surprisingly enough, my brother, who I thought would be very like against that, is very much like, well, that's fine. Like, find something that you want to do and like pursue that, but like look for something. Don't just like laze around doing stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And that's reasonable.
Yeah. Well,
but it just baffled me that he actually had that idea. It's like, no, you don't have to go to college. That's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, it's so cool that he does have the opportunity to like work with your dad.
Yeah.
To learn the trade of being a mechanic.
Yeah.
Without like any.
Because someone needs to run that family business. It's not gonna be me.
Okay, so I have a question for you because you say all your parents pushed all 5 of you to go to college, right? Like that was the goal because they wanted that for you guys. How many of you went to college?
4. Technically, all of us went to college. I didn't pursue anything else after a certain amount of time, but technically we all went to college.
What is I don't know if you want to say names of your siblings, but like, what did they all get a 4-year degree, and what did they do?
No. But my parents are never gonna watch this. Technically, Art never got his degree.
Really?
Wait, really?
Technically.
What does technically mean?
Yeah.
I could cut this out if you want.
He's missing a single
Class.
class.
One
Yeah.
unit?
Well, here, do you want to go just from your oldest sibling to like you and kind of?
I don't know the exactness of everyone's. What exactly are you asking?
So
again?
okay,
Sorry.
so your sister, she went to school for 4 years, got a teaching degree,
She got a teaching degree. Yeah, she went to San Diego, I believe,
San Diego State.
or San Jose. One of those two. One of the Sands.
There's several.
Those are in very different
I,
places.
I know, but that's why I'm like, I know it's a San something, but I'm pretty sure San Diego or San Jose. It's
Okay.
one of those two.
And then
And then Tony went to what did he go into? He went to 4-year college to El Camino, then switched over to something else, and I think he was in mechanical engineering.
oh really?
I want to say I don't know.
I didn't know he was an engineer.
He's not.
He's
He's not.
He is that by degree,
By
if he has his
right.
degree.
I could be wrong.
But if,
I know very little about my eldest siblings.
but yeah, because I wasn't sure if he went to college, because I mean, I just know he's a manager at a car company.
Yeah.
But
no, he went to college. He pursued 4 years in something. I have pictures.
there's a graduation.
There's a graduation. He's holding his son.
What's it?
Yeah, because baby.
Yeah.
And then,
Did his wife go to school?
She
Okay.
went to school for teaching and all that.
And then, so you're saying Art went for basically like 3.95 years?
Yeah, basically.
How did he not get that last class, and why didn't he just do it?
Also, how did your parents not find out he, like, did he go to a ceremony?
Yeah, he did. He went to a ceremony.
He walked?
He walked, yeah. But then he got something that's like, you're missing 1 unit.
And he just never took that class?
No,
Why?
because he ended up getting a job, and the job was, like, he already had some work experience because I believe he interned at the job that he was at.
Yeah, but like take the class, get the degree, man.
Yeah, because our uncle went to Cal Poly as well. So our uncle, our aunt, our mom, our dad, us, Ryan, me, and then our cousin all went to Cal Poly Pomona.
They're all alumni.
So, but our uncle dropped out a semester early because he was working in grocery and being promoted as manager and thought it'd be this great thing. He was also an engineer. And so he never actually graduated, which is part of the reason when our mom and dad started dating, Grandpa was nervous is because he thought Mom would also drop out early to get married and like start a family and stuff. And he's like, you are not allowed to do anything until she has that piece of paper.
And then you get a different piece of paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So he got a job and he was perfectly fine. And as far as I'm aware of, I think the idea of like going back for like a single thing is
It's
just
probably not worth it.
it's not worth it. Yeah. Or it's too time consuming.
Because like I said, after your first job, nobody cares about your school.
To a degree, if you were to get a degree in it, you would actually get paid a little bit more.
Yeah, it's true. It matters for the pay scale.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
because I
but Art's in a spot where he doesn't.
Well, because what I was gonna say is in our field specifically, because we're both software developers, is like, it's not as important.
It's not.
As like maybe an engineering field or something like that, because a lot of programmers or in software developers are self-taught. I mean, I'm sure a lot of managers that I've talked to, they definitely prefer somebody who went through like a structured program and got their degree to like these boot campers, because a lot of them have a lot of holes in like their knowledge base. But in our field, it's definitely not as required.
No, it's not, and that definitely shows because Art's getting paid perfectly fine. He's in a great position. He has a lot of work experience. He is a good worker. He knows his stuff, and if he doesn't know the stuff, he knows how to
figure it out.
How to figure it out.
Half of our job is just figuring out how to get stuff.
Absolutely, and he's very good at that, and he's very good at his job. So he's done great. And then Johnny, he went from going to school to be a programmer. Where was he? He was in San Luis Obispo, and he realized he didn't want to be a programmer, so he came back home. He went to community college. We actually went to the same community college at the same time. That was interesting, going to school. We had the same class once. I'm like, this is how it feels like to be in a class with
Did you guys
other.
do that on purpose? Or was it an accident?
No, we just needed something to fill in the units requirement for the FAFSA and all that. Because you need to have a 20 or something. I forget what the minimum was in order to get the FAFSA.
Because like we took some.
You have to be a full-time student, I think.
Yeah.
Because
Like
we took
12
some
years.
classes together
Like that, yeah.
to fill requirements, and we thought it'd be fun to do some things together. But
we both took music because we both like music.
but yeah, we usually did it on purpose.
No, we just happened to be in the same class.
How many classes did we take together?
A lot.
Only like a handful, not too.
Because
many.
I
we
just
took,
remember
like,
the
that
universe
history
in 10
class.
weeks,
We took that one.
which is a great name of class.
The history class too. That dude with the glass. It's like a U.S. history class. He had the books. Yeah, he had the glasses. I forgot. I think it was like sophomore year or junior year or something. It's a history class. It's probably not sophomore year then. And then yeah, the universe in 10 weeks. I think were those the only two. I wanted you to take the philosophy of death class with me, but you wouldn't take it with me.
They interfered with another one of my classes, I think.
That makes sense.
Because getting up into like the junior and senior level, there was only like one class for a particular
One
requirement
section.
that I needed.
One section.
Yeah, one section per class. And so I didn't have a choice. I needed that one to take the next class the next semester because they were all like in line. And it was like, oh, you take this one in the fall, this one in the winter, this one in the spring. It was very structured. But there's only one section for each of them. So I was like, well, that Tuesday, Thursday slot's taken. Sorry.
All right, boys. I think this has been a good conversation.
Yeah, we talked for
It's
a
gone
long.
pretty long. I'm probably going to cut all this last part out, just to cut it down a bit. But it was a good conversation. Thank you for coming to my episode.
Yeah, your episode.
My episode. Definitely not Ian's.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this conversation, we clearly have a lot to say and a lot more to talk about education.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we will bounce back at some point, but we'll give you some time between this one and the next one to digest. If you have any thoughts, please share them in the comments. We want to create discourse because education is important, as we've all said and agreed upon.
There are things that can be improved upon, not necessarily in our hands to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other factors that need to be done.
All we can do is educate the masses.
Try to.
And maybe together we can all
and
work
also
for a
learn
better
ourselves.
system.
Yeah.
Because there's clearly stuff that we don't know full knowledge of, and that's perfectly fine. But
Absolutely.
educate each other, everyone help each other.
Yeah.
And let's work to improve the system together because a more educated society is an improved society.
And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because there's a huge faction that will tell you otherwise, and that's the problem we're in right now.
We don't learn the mistakes of history, we are doomed to repeat it.
Okay, so before we end, we gotta do our
Beans.
ubiquitous. Not ubiquitous. What is the word I'm looking for?
A standard.
Traditional.
Traditional, yeah. Obligatory.
Obligatory.
Bean pick.
Alright, I'll be orange.
Green.
Red.
Sure. Which color are you?
Okay. We got new beans.
Oh yeah,
They all look the same to me.
No, those are orange.
There's a
orange,
red.
Orange.
No, those are pink.
This is red
Pink.
for sure.
Those
this
are
is
pink.
Purple. This
This is
green.
orange.
Give me your light. Ooh, they look kind of orange.
They're orange.
No, they're all pink.
They're
They
orange.
look.
That is what world?
I understand where you're seeing the pink, but under Josh's white
That's
light,
like
it looks
a
orange.
blood orange.
Yeah.
This is clear.
I know that that's also orange, but they're different. I think that's orange.
Like, can I eat one to see what flavor it is?
Yeah, I
and
mean,
be like, yeah, that's the pink one or
okay, tell me. Josh taste test, pink or orange?
It's pink.
Okay. All right. So then 5 pinks. So red wins. No, green.
No, red
is
and
tied.
green are tied.
Okay. Okay. We need more. Oh my gosh. At the end of the day, we have 1 orange, 1 red, and 3 greens. Ian wins again. Who would have seen that coming?
Yeah.
We even got new beans and everything.
And the next episode, he'll betroth it onto me and then proceed to ask all the
How
questions.
long has it been? Proceed to run the whole episode, even though he abdicated the throne. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this topic on education that I picked. Definitely. And we will see you all in the next one. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow us, ring that bell, ding dong the bell.
New episodes come out every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Yes.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm. And we will see you all in the next one. Thank you.
Bye.
Alright, who has...
I have to pee so bad.